Okay, whether you guys say to or not, I'm going to do it because it said we can. Okay. One winter's day. Told from Mind's perspective, originally posted on the page. Dad didn't have work today, so he and Thule had gone to gather peruse. I would have only been dead weight, so I was staying at the gate to help Otto with his math work as per usual. I'm assuming this is volume 4, after volume 4, part 1. So this is after... Wait, this is after... Is this after her Jareve? I don't know. I don't know. Let me know, please. Noon passed. Peru gatherings ended when the sun reached its highest point, so a bunch of people came trudging back from the forest. The guards were always busy making sure nobody suspicious attempted to sneak in among the returning crowd, which meant Otto had to go out to help. I continued scratching away at my stone slate in the meantime, and soon enough Dad poked his head into the room. Time to go, Mind. Okay, this is before. This is before that, okay. This is before she became Rose Mind. Where's Thule? She went ahead with Ralph and Lutz. We gotta hurry. Dad picked me up, placed me on his shoulders, then carried me out of the room and away from the gate. He still refused to let me walk when he was in a rush. I was so slow that my fate was to be carried whenever busy adults had somewhere to be. He strode so quickly that we soon caught up to Thule and the others. Hi, Thule, how many did you get this time, I asked. 3. All thanks to Dad coming with me, she smiled. I replied, the basket sitting atop the sleigh she was pulling did indeed contain 3 perus. And you, Lutz? Ralph? We got 7. We almost got 8, but we just weren't quick enough. We continued our journey home, talking all the while. Eventually, we left the main road and entered an alleyway. There were several people arguing up ahead. Had to be on my day off, Dad grumbled as he put me down. I gotta check this out. Thule, go ahead in case I need to go back and tell the gate. Mine, stay here. Sorry, Lutz, but could you stick with her? I can, but... Lutz trailed off and turned to his brothers. Sasha, the oldest, responded with a nod. Sure, why not, he said. We're just gonna stay with you, though. Thanks, Dad said to Sasha. He unwound his scarf and then wrapped it around Lutz and me. Don't leave his side no matter what, all right, Mine? Couldn't even if I wanted to, I replied, patting a hand against the scarf, practically binding me to Lutz. Dad rushed over to the rowdy people, showing remarkable agility for someone wading through snow, and demanded to know what they were doing. Right, Ralph said. We're off. No sooner had Ralph and the others gone than everything went really quiet. I stared aimlessly in the direction that Dad had gone, hoping he would return soon, and it was then that I noticed Lutz was doing the same. Sorry, Lutz, it must suck having to wait in the cold with me like this. Nah, the sun's out today. I'm more worried about you catching a cold, he replied, glancing down at the scarf as he started shuffling over a little. A smile crept onto my face as I realized he was moving to shield me from the wind. I'm fine, really. Dad's scarf is super warm. Oh, one thing I never got. I actually was going to make a separate video about this, but I'm debating whether I should or not. Let me know if I need to, because this is about how the heck the high priest and the high bishop had no clue that mine was a commoner. Because she said she had the devouring. That should have been a clue enough, because the devouring is for commoners that have mana. So, that should have been a dead giveaway right there. You're warming up too, right? Maybe. We exchanged a smile. Dad reappeared again a brief moment later, having managed to settle the issue with his mediation skills. Sorry about that, he said. Let's get home. We're having Peru cakes tonight. Aww. This is a short story I thought up after seeing the illustrations Suzaka-sama drew for New Year's Day in 2016. Aww. I'm not giving you my daughter. Oh, no. Is there going to be a misunderstanding here? How's your daughter, Captain? Leckles dropped me at the gate on my way to my shift. From what I knew, he was better than average at math, and mine's crazy work had really inspired him to improve. These reasons were why Otto had him planned as impinned as his replacement. Otto had decided that he was going to quit being a soldier in a few years' time to actually start working as a member of a merchant family. Who's asking, I shot back. I'm not going to let you marry either of them. What are you even talking about? They're a decade too young for me to even consider that. God, let me get back on track. I'm asking since we haven't seen mine at the gate all summer. I've been stuck helping Otto all alone. Otto's style was to offload his work on anyone capable of doing it, and Lego was the only one good enough at math to make a good replacement. He normally got mine to do the double-checking work when she came by, but that wasn't happening anymore. The temple had completely stolen her away. Otto was understandably devastated. Nobody could have seen it coming. Okay, so, this is when she joined the temple. Okay? So this is their cover story. A rich merchant hired mine to work in his store, I explained. She's doing math for him so she doesn't have time to waste here at the gate. Also, don't forget how weak she is. We weren't telling anyone that mine had joined the temple. Instead, we were saying that she was being looked after by the Gilberta Company. It wasn't entirely untrue. She and Lutz were going there to sell the weird things they were making together. Man, it's been rough lately, Leckle sighed. Anna just keeps comparing me to your daughter. Mine was crazy smart. That was what people told me, at least. I personally wasn't sure how to measure something like that. What I did know was that Otto had turned down more helpers than I could count, each time groaning that teaching idiots is a waste of time. Oh, definitely. And after just a brief moment with mine, that same man had practically begged me to let her be his assistant. I was well aware mine had negotiated with Otto, then earned the approval of a rich merchant and secured a position under him as an apprentice. Her achievements hadn't stopped there either. Now that she was in the temple, she was serving as the orphanage director and giving the high priest a hand with his work. I didn't know what made someone smart, but I did know that my daughter was pretty up there. Yeah, the gods sure do love my daughter. She's special, unlike you. Oh, that sounds like foreshadowing to me. But her being special was why the temple had gone after her in the first place. There were times now when I kind of resented the gods. And it was good, it was bad. God, you always exaggerate, Captain, but she really is special, and I really hate being compared to her. I could hardly blame him there. Okay, only 139 pages. Okay. It must have been miserable staring at boards and paperwork while the other soldiers were training and standing guard. Mine and Otto were two of the rare few who actually liked that kind of work. If someone told me to do math all day, I'd want to quit my job for sure. It's not right for Otto to force all the work onto you, Leckle. I'll tell him to train some other soldiers, too. I'll also try asking Mine if she knows any good tricks for teaching others. Effa had mentioned that Mine tutored Lutz in math and reading over the winter to help him become an apprentice merchant. He'd apparently made a lot of progress in just one season. When I spoke to Mine, the first thing she said was that I needed to look for someone who likes paperwork the same as Otto. You'll want to find someone who lacks stamina and wants to do nothing but bookwork like me. Guards brimming of passion for building muscle and protecting the city will never be good at paperwork. I'm sure they struggle enough with finding motivation to study. At the end of the day, you can't force people to learn. It'd be nice if you could just hire Grey Priests since they're good at math and used to dealing with nobles, but oh well. Grey Priests could most likely get a job at the gate with my recommendation, but they didn't know anything about life out here. They lived in a completely separate world, and the last thing I needed was looking after a bunch of guys who didn't even know enough about the lower city to buy from stalls. As useful as their skills sound, hiring them seems pretty dang tough, I murmured, remembering how their eyes would dart all over the place as they walked through the city, and the way they'd recoil from shouts and arguments. They weren't bad people, but they couldn't work at the gate, even if they were doing nothing but paperwork. The lower city would eat them alive. Oh, definitely, they aren't good with confrontation. Mine smiled. It might not be possible now, but I hope that in 10 or 20 years, it becomes normal for orphans to leave the temple. Maybe they could even seek employment in the lower city. Maybe. Maybe. She was wearing the expression of an orphanage director thinking about her orphans' futures, and I could suddenly feel the vast gap that had opened up between us. She was getting absorbed into the temple, into a world I couldn't enter. I instinctively pulled her into a tight hug. I'm not giving you my daughter, not in the temple or the gods. My handful of a little sister. Told from Tuli's perspective. On the day I learned to bind books at the orphanage, Mine was bringing home one of the finished picture books. She technically made one here herself. Made one here yesterday, but that was just an example for her to bring to the workshop. This was her first time bringing home a book that was actually finished. So this is what it's like to bring a book home, Mine exclaimed. She was hugging the picture book Lutz had given her from the workshop, wearing the biggest smile I'd ever seen. It was such a long road to get here, such a long and painful road, but I've finally done it. I've got a book I can keep in my room. Yes! Sister Mine, be mindful of your behavior, her attendant Rosina warned, having watched Mine jump for joy even though she was still wearing her blue shrine maiden robes. Mine responded with a polite smile and said that she'd be more careful, but I really didn't see that happening. I could already see her well-mannered expression giving way to a very dopey grin. Mine, you're getting too excited, I said with a chuckle. I mean, duh! I can start keeping books at home now. It's over. She's gonna get sick for sure. I shook my head and looked at Lutz, who shrugged in turn. Let's go home already, he said to mine, not even trying to hide the exasperation in his voice. At this rate, you're gonna collapse on the way back. Okay, mine exclaimed. She bounded up the stairs with the picture book in hand, refusing to get changed, which resulted in another scolding from Rosina. I don't think she's going to listen to anything we say today, I observed. True, but she finally got what she's been working toward for 2 whole years, Lutz replied. Can't blame her for being so happy. Plus, when I think about the days she was gathering up grass and trying to make clay tablets, I feel more like giving her a pat on the back than anything. Lutz had played a bigger role than anyone in mine's bookmaking attempts. Dad had given him a little money and shared some food with him, but still, even as her big sister, I was really impressed that he'd managed to tolerate her weirdness for so long. It's all thanks to you, Lutz. Thanks for helping make mine's weird dream come true, I said sincerely. Lutz frowned in response, looking like he didn't really feel right about it. You and my brothers always talk about being with her as hard. But she's done a lot for me. I've pretty much been helping out so she can make my own dream come true, too, he said, looking down at the apprentice clothes he was wearing and tugging on the shoulder a little. As far as he was concerned, he and mine were equal. If not for her help and advice, he wouldn't have become an apprentice merchant. I do think mine paved the way for you, what with her weird inventions getting Mr. Benno's attention. But you've definitely been having a harder time than she has. Maybe, but you and my brothers really don't get how amazing she is, Lutz said, his expression nothing but serious. I knew from when I had seen her negotiating with Benno over the hairpins that she was doing something special, but I usually saw her being a burden on everyone, so it was hard for me to actually think about her that way. I guess we just don't know what mine's like in the Gilberta Company. Yeah, but that's not what I'm talking about. Look, do you remember how mine taught me math and reading? Recalling how mine had tutored Lutz over the winter. He really had worked hard to become an apprentice merchant. Do you know how much merchants pay for home tutors who teach that kind of thing? Nuh-uh. How could I? A large silver per month, and that gets you 3 one-bell sessions a week. A large silver! That's 100,000 lions. Mine did that much for me without asking for any money in return. Lutz had apparently been stunned silent when he heard other apprentice merchants talk about how much their parents were paying for tutors. They had asked him how he had learned math and reading without being able to afford one himself, and it was then he understood just how amazing mine was. When he puts it like that, I guess she is kind of amazing. I entertained the thought for a moment, but it was blown away in an instant when mine came rushing back down the stairs. Sorry for the wait, let's go home, she exclaimed, completely missing a step just a beat later. She would have fallen down the stairs had Rosina not caught her at the last moment. Never mind, she's not amazing, she's a clumsy goof. Mine, put that book away in your basket, I said. If you fall again, there's no way you'll be able to catch yourself while you're holding it like that. Mine looked between me and the basket I was holding out, her brow knitted in a frown. But I wanted to enjoy the smell of the ink and paper on the way home, she mumbled. Isn't that what you're supposed to do with new books? Revel in their glorious existence? Aren't you supposed to read them? You're not going to fool anyone with that nonsense, I shot back. Also, that's your first book, remember? Mine looked up with a start, at which point Lutz muttered, dummy, under his breath. I stepped forward, nabbed the book, and stuck it in the basket. Come on, Mine, you've got to understand the dangers here. You can't let people see you walking around with a bunch of expensive paper. We're just kids. They'd steal it from us in this for sure. Paper was expensive, though with all the rip sheets Mine kept at home and did all sorts of things with, the fact was easy to forget. Parchment made from animals was the most common type, and even that was only used by rich people or nobles. It wasn't something that kids like us, dressed in commoner clothes, should ever be walking around with. Mine flinched and started to shiver at the thought of the book being stolen. Tuli, where should I keep it? Should I ask Dad to make me a bookshelf after all? Keep it in your box until you get more. Just watch where you're walking. Even though I'd put the book away in the basket, Mine kept glancing over it as we made our way home. She was struggling to walk straight, as a result so giddy she was pretty much drifting from side to side. She should know walking like that is dangerous. In the end, Lutz and I sandwiched Mine between us, each taking one of her hands. This is nice. I was just thinking it's a little cold out, she said. You know, Mine, we're not doing this for warmth. That was what I wanted to say, but she was smiling so happily that I decided to keep my mouth shut. I'm back, Mine announced. Look, this is the finished picture book I've ever brought into my very own home to keep. She had already shown Mom and Dad the same finished picture book yesterday, but she showed it to them again anyway. They exchanged a conflicted glance. Mine, you showed us that one yesterday, Dad said. We already looked inside. She really went crazy over it yesterday. Dad was wearing a grimace, probably from having flashbacks to last night. Mine had rambled on about Bible stories while he drank. He had only given the picture book a quick look through, but she naturally kept going anyway. Yesterday's book was just a test run, so I had to bring it back to the temple, but this one's staying here forever. Isn't that amazing? It's our home's first book. And it's the Bible, too. This is bliss. Isn't it great to have books that we can read whenever we want? Don't you just want there to be more and more here? Not really. I looked up in the air and started spinning around. It was nice to see her having fun, but this was getting dangerous. She'd shown just as much excitement on the way back, too, so her stamina was bound to run out soon. And the moment that thought crossed my mind, mine stepped on the ground strangely and tipped to one side. Oh, she's falling over. Mine! Yeah, my book! Dad threw his arms out toward mine, but rather than grabbing onto them, she spun around and embraced the fall. Her only priority was making sure the book didn't get dirty. I've never seen mine move so fast in my life. I watched with a strange sense of awe as mine fell on her back, bumped her head against the floor with a resounding thump, and then immediately sprang back up. Is my book okay? She blurted, thoroughly checking it all over. How did she not get knocked out from that? She got knocked out from a single snowball. How is that possible? I was at a complete loss for words. Meanwhile, Dad stood frozen in place, looking forlorn, his arms still outstretched. Mine, worry about yourself when you fall, all right? Are you feeling okay? I asked. I'm fine, she replied. These wounds are honorable. More like dishonorable. She was proudly puffing out her chest, and I didn't have a clue why. Everyone was looking down at her with exasperation, but she completely ignored us, and continued flipping the book around as she looked for any damage. My injuries will eventually heal, but I don't want to have any tools to fix books. That means a damaged book is probably damaged for good. I might need to start working on that. Yeah, that'd probably be a good idea. What I was worried about most was mine's head. Not because she just hit the ground, mind you. It simply didn't seem screwed on right. Wasn't there anything we could do to get her to care about something other than books? Well, she cares about you guys too, so... Mom rested a hand on her oh, this is before Kamio got born, okay. Mom rested a hand on her large belly and sighed, relieved to see that mine wasn't hurt. Mine, if you don't want the book to get dirty, why don't you just calm down? I'm fine, I'm calm. Now I just need to read the book aloud as much as I can so that my little sibling grows into a bookworm too. She cared about a book getting damaged more than she cared about herself getting hurt. As we spoke, she was probably thinking about the next book she was going to make. Geez, mine, you're ridiculous. I knew mine was doing a ton of impressive things, like negotiating on equal terms with the owner of a big store, earning tons of money, and getting the respect of a bunch of orphans, but from my perspective, she was just a massive handful. Only 17 pages so far? Dang. Studying literature and picture books. Originally written for the Chosen Group book fair. Okay. But give me a book for helping, please. I want to learn how to read too, I said, having worked up the courage after mine asked me to help sew together some pages. Okay, this is Thule. Okay. I would be going to the orphanage more and more, and the last thing I wanted was to feel like the only person in the world who couldn't read and write. I mean, not knowing how to read is supposed to be normal, but everyone I know seems to be able to read and write. Mine could do both, of course. Even Dad could, since he worked as a guard. It used to be that he couldn't write very well, even though he knew how to read, but when he found out mine had started to learn from Otto, he had taken up studying on his own to maintain his pride as a father. Oh, he doesn't want to be shown up by Otto, of course. Lutz had learned to read just last winter, having been taught by mine so that he could become an apprentice merchant, but now he was good enough to read contracts like they were nothing at all. It was so impressive that Mrs. Carla bragged about it all the time. Mrs. Karina also knew how to write since she made notes on the board she used for work. With my aim being to one day join her workshop, I need to learn to read and write too. Of course, yeah, it is truly okay. And above all else, I didn't want mine and Lutz to leave me behind. This is a slate pen. You hold it like this. Oh, not like that, Thule. You can't grip it like that, mine said. Yeah, you might break it. My lesson started with me holding a white slate pen and trying to draw lines on the stone slate in front of me. Learning to write actual letters was apparently still a bit too advanced for me right now. I held the pen as mine instructed and tried drawing a line just as she demonstrated, but for some reason I couldn't put enough force into it. A line wasn't even remotely straight either. It was weird, thin, and wobbled around all over the place. Just like there's a right way to hold a needle, there's a right way to hold a pen, mine explained. You can draw lines no matter how you hold them, but if you don't learn to hold them correctly, you'll smash their tips to pieces. I kept drawing lines, making sure I was holding the pen in the way it made it hard to use force. But they still didn't end up straight. Mine was doing it so easily, too. Keep trying, no matter how much you're struggling, she said. If you can't draw straight lines or smooth curves, you won't be able to sketch clothing designs. I was even having to practice reading letters in between writing sessions. Once you've memorized the spoken text, follow along the letters with your eyes. Soon enough, you'll be able to write them yourself. You've still got a long time before you'll need to go to Karina's workshop, so you don't need to rush as Lutz did. But it still took Lutz over half a year, right? I want to move into Mrs. Karina's workshop, so I can't waste my time. Lahange's contracts lasted 3 years, and any arrangements to move to workshops needed to be made in advance. That only gave me a year of wiggle room at most. A year is more than enough. You should try to actually enjoy the process too, Mine said with a smile. If you start to hate books and letters, you'll never pick up any of this stuff. Mr. Otto's struggling right now because all the apprentices who were forced into learning aren't remembering a thing. As she spoke, she spread out the pages of the Bible picture books for kids. The God of Darkness spent a staggering long time alone, she read, tracing her fingers along the words so I could follow along. The pure joy in her expression was unmistakable, and there was a sparkle in her golden moon-like eyes. The God of Darkness spent a staggeringly long time alone, I repeated the words to myself, watching as mine more or less melted with bliss. I couldn't recognize the letters yet, so the most I could do was repeat what she said. Right, good. Next line. The God of Light appeared next to the solitary God of Darkness, brightening his surroundings with light. In the story, the God of Darkness and the Goddess of Light met and got married. Then they had 4 children, the Goddess of Water, the God of Fire, the Goddess of Wind, and the God of Earth. Goddess of Earth, sorry. The first to be born was Flutrain, the Goddess of Water. Flutrain has the power to heal and purify. I continued repeating the contents of the book back to mine. Once we were done, I returned to drawing lines on the slate. Great, mine said. Now that you can draw lines that straight, I think you can move on to writing letters. After much practice drawing individual lines, I finally started to learn actual letters. Mine first taught me to write my name. You'll be using your name the most after all. Lutz had to write his name on a contract when he joined the Gilberta Company. If you want to join Karina's workshop, you'll probably have to do the same. Wait, really? You should have said that earlier. Drawing lines was hard enough, so it made sense that memorizing all the letters was even harder. Lutz had memorized them all over the winter, but I wasn't sure I could manage that in time. For when I needed to ask Mrs. Karina whether I could join her workshop, I was getting super nervous. I wrote my name while carefully looking at the example mine had provided. She went on to teach me her own name, the names of everyone in our family, the names of my friends, Mrs. Karina's name, and how to write the Gilberta Company. Oh, Lutz is here, mine said. I need to get going. She was heading to the temple almost every day for winter preparations, and unlike most apprentices, she didn't get every day other day off. She really is going there as much as she can, even though she gets sick and bedridden so often. I kept transcribing the text from the picture book at mine's instruction. A short while later, I heard a quiet thud. I looked up and saw Mom with her big belly sitting a cup of water on the table. I see that you're working hard, honey. This is super hard. It's crazy that Lutz learned all this over the winter, but it's even crazier that mine learned them all while helping with math at the gate. I wasn't exactly sure when it had happened, but mine had mentioned helping Mr. Otto teach the apprentices at the gate. In other words, she was already educating others less than a year after she had gone there the first time. I hadn't really understood it at the time, but now I knew how impossible that really was. That reminds me of when I was a little girl. My father made me help at the gate, too. Your father, Mom? You mean Granddad? That's right, he was a gate commander. You know how nobles sometimes have meetings at the gates? He taught me to prepare tea and speak properly there. He never taught me my letters, though, since I didn't have any real use for them. Granddad and Grandma were both gone now. Mom didn't talk about them much. If mine had kept helping out at the gate and doing her writing at home instead of going to the temple, I'm sure she would have been taught to prepare tea for meetings just as I was. I can't see mine actually managing to boil water properly, I mused aloud. She couldn't even draw water from the well yet, let alone make tea. Mom and I couldn't help but laugh as we tried to picture it, but it wasn't long before my eyes dropped back down to the slate. Mom, I want to learn letters too. Mom, want to learn letters too? We can learn at the same time. I'm busy making the baby's clothes and diapers, so maybe another day. You can teach me in the winter if we have the time. Wait, you want me to teach you? I asked, blinking in surprise. Mom replied with a mischievous smile. Be sure to learn well so you can help me out. Okay, I'll do my best. I was so happy to know Mom was willing to rely on me that I felt even more motivated than before, and so, with the fire lit under me, I worked even harder at studying until a certain question came to mind. Just how much is this book worth anyway? I knew the hairpins I made were being sold at a high price, so when mine came back from the temple, contemplating about the next one, I took the opportunity to ask about the book. We made it in the workshop, so the base cost isn't very high, but I guess it would go about for 1 small gold and 8 large silver in a store. What? I recoiled in surprise, my eyes flitting between mine and the picture book. I couldn't believe she had brought something so valuable home with her, and it was almost unthinkable that she wanted to make even more of them. I wanted to make them a little more affordable, but plant paper is still expensive, and ink is a real bottleneck. With Benno being so forceful about securing profit, I imagine it'll be a while before the price goes down. Mine seemed focused about how to reduce the price, but that wasn't it wasn't at all what I had meant. This isn't something we should be keeping here at home, right? I shouldn't be studying with something so expensive. What? What are you talking about, Thule? I made it as an educational resource to help children learn to read, Mine said. She looked utterly confused, but I was the one who was really bewildered. Mine apparently wasn't bothered about leaving something worth almost 2 small golds here in the house, and she was fine with letting both me and the soon-to-be-born baby use it. I had never thought the picture book was worth so much money. The blood drained from my face when I thought about how carelessly I'd been handling it. Mine, can books be washed? No, Thule, don't wash the book. The paper will get ruined if you soak it in water. Don't wash it no matter what. Then how do you clean it when it gets dirty? I glanced at the book and noticed there were already some white smears on its pages from the dust of my slate pen. That sent a jolt of panic through me, but mine just gave a casual smile. It's best not to get them dirty in the first place, but it doesn't really matter that much if you do. Really, don't worry about it. How can I not worry when they're so expensive? I exclaimed. At this point, I was scared to even touch the picture book. What should I do? I shouldn't have asked for one. Shouldn't have asked for one of my own. Okay, who is this? A tea party with my older sister. Let's see. Last summer, my older sister married a noble from the Veronica faction. She had just recently returned to our home estate, having received permission from her husband to spend a few days with her family, and now I was about to have a tea party with her for the first time in quite a while. Once one sees their family much less often once they are married, and since outside tea parties are focused more on socializing with others than spending time with one's family, there had been no opportunities for my sister and I to have a private discussion. I was consequently rather pleased that we were having a tea party with just the 2 of us. I took the first sip of tea, as was common etiquette. My sister shortly followed suit, albeit with a great deal more grace than when she had previously lived with us. Then she got straight to the point. So, Crystal, just what manner of tea party was that Harshville assembly everyone had been speaking about? You and Mother attended, correct? Oh, this is after the Harshville concert. Ooh, I love that. You did. It was positively splendid. As I am sure you have heard, the songs Lord Ferdinand played were simply marvelous. His voice had such richness that it was impossible not to become completely enraptured. There was no doubting that a princess once sent him an invitation to play. I had attended the Royal Academy with Lady Christine, and while her playing was certainly impressive, I could not help but prefer Lord Ferdinand's. I closed my eyes and reveled in the memory, only for my sister to interrupt in a faintly impatient tone. Please do describe what manner of gathering it was. The event has been brought up every single tea party I've attended since. She hadn't been able to attend herself since her husband in the Veronica faction had not given his permission, but the Harshville assembly would no doubt continue to be a topic of discussion at all tea parties for quite some time. I sighed. Your husband is a member of the Veronica faction, so you cannot change your allegiance as easily as us neutral nobles. Their timing truly was unfortunate. To think Lady Veronica would be detained not even a year after your marriage. Had she waited just 1 more year, the political shift in power would have allowed her to cancel her engagement. Divorces, on the other hand, were viewed much more negatively within noble society. I was actually wondering about that. How does that work? Was it possible? I guess it's just not. I guess it is possible. It's just not a good thing. That said, my sister was a little too old to be looking for a new partner in any case. I resolved to marry a noble from the Veronica faction 2 years ago when the rumors of Lady Veronica preparing for Lord Wilfrid's baptism began to spread. It seemed certain that she would maintain an iron grip on her authority for years to come, but I suppose nothing ever goes the way one wishes. I suspect the goddess of time was involved. It is the fault of Ob Ehrenfest, I must admit. His Heartspiel performance was splendid as well, but he is the one who ruined you and our families. I was highly displeased with the Ob, though. I would only speak ill of him in private family discussions such as this. Lord Sylvester had refused to take a second wife, no matter how many times Lady Veronica ordered it, instead devoting himself entirely to Lady Florencia. This had resulted in many nobles thinking Lady Veronica's power would wane when he became Ob. Yeah, that's, their relationship is probably the most healthy relationship out of all the nobility that we have seen so far, besides possibly Karlstadt and Elvira. Actually, no. The fact that those two didn't really get along too well, actually, those are probably the most healthy relationship. If you guys believe otherwise, let me know, and who and why. But the fact that he doesn't plan to take a second wife speaks volumes that he is utterly devoted to Florencia, and that he is not going to do it, whether it be for love or political influence or what. He will never do it. The guy might be childish, but he does have a good heart. That had not been the case, however. Nothing had changed when he came to power. Lord Ferdinand was sent to the temple despite having achieved the highest grades in the Royal Academy, and the Archducal family was surrounded at all times by sycophants of the Veronica faction. For these reasons, the neutral nobles who carefully eyed the balance of power had steadily begun to favor Lady Veronica. When Lord Sylvester and Lady Florencia were entrusting the upbringing of their child to Lady Veronica, who could be blamed by thinking her power was set in stone, I remarked. Indeed, that is why I asked Father for his permission to marry a noble from the Veronica faction. After my sister's marriage last year, I was instructed to look for a husband from the Veronica faction as well. I was also told to avoid getting close to Lyesgang nobles in the Royal Academy, as our family shifted from being neutral to supporting the Veronica faction. And yet to think the balance of power would completely flip overnight. Ob Ehrenfest had suddenly arrested Lady Veronica at the end of spring. He had shown her nothing but obedience for so many years prior, so nobody had expected it in the slightest. Under normal circumstances, one would plan ahead to a tremendous amount before arresting the mother of an Ob. But there were no signs that this had been the case here. The political waters had been quiet and still, with none of the usual ripples. My husband told me that not even his retainers or any of the higher-ranked nobles who accompanied him to the Archduke conference know about his plans. It all came much too suddenly. What in the world was going through the Ob's mind? My sister complained as we both sipped our tea. If the Ob had planned to get rid of Lady Veronica all this time, I would rather he had made it more apparent so that we could prepare accordingly. The Ob's thoughts are beyond me, but we do know he promptly adopted Lady Elvira's daughter, a girl who was the subject of much scorn from Lady Veronica. We can imagine the Lyesgang nobles will start receiving more favor now. Indeed, had Lady Veronica been in power, the Ob would never have been allowed to adopt one of Lady Elvira's daughters, no matter how much Ehrenfest needs her mana. Daughters? She only has one daughter, which is Rosemine, so what the heck are they talking about? The Ob adopting Lady Rosemine was a symbolic gesture that he would favor Lyesgang nobles moving forward. Nope, they have no clue of the truth. And they never will. He had surely made this move so that he would not have to take a wife other than Lady Florencia. Crystal, my husband is so taken by the Veronica faction that I fear the other nobles will soon leave him behind. In fact, he still refuses to accept that the balance of power has shifted at all. Just as few Lyesgang nobles had expressed their obedience to Lady Veronica, few members of the Veronica faction were submitting to this abrupt change. I understand your fears, dear sister, but I imagine the Ob will strive not to eliminate members of the Veronica faction, but to absorb them into the Lyesgang fold instead. Many members of the Veronica faction were present during the Heartspiel assembly, and the majority of those among his retainers are likewise of the Veronica faction. He cannot distance them all over mere faction politics. Yeah, that would have been the case had the whole Georgine thing happened and the attack not happened. If that all didn't happen, this wouldn't have been an issue. But now it has become an issue. Nobles of the Veronica faction were present all throughout Ehrenfest's upper power structures. It was not possible to suddenly eliminate them all without putting the daily operation and management of the duchy into complete jeopardy. That would be ideal, but he is the man who imprisoned his mother overnight without so much as a warning to his retainers. It is hard to imagine he will give much thought to the position we or our futures have been thrust into. Our house was neutral to begin with, so it was possible for us to lean toward either faction depending on our next actions. Now that my sister had married a noble from the Veronica faction, however, this will not be easy for her unless her husband changed his mind as well. Will you be marrying a Lies Gang noble, Crystal? I believe so. Father says it is essential for us to return to neutrality. That is why I was allowed to attend the Harspiel assembly after all. Father had gone as white as a sheet when he found out Lady Veronica had been imprisoned, considering we had so recently leaned toward her faction. From that point onward, he began spending his days thinking only of a way for us to return back to the now dominating Lady Florencia faction. The nobility was thankfully still in a panic, which gave us a prime opportunity to shift ourselves back to the primary power. My marriage will play a significant role in this. Your final term at the Royal Academy is this winter, correct? Will you be able to find an escort in such a short span of time? My sister asked, worried. I would indeed have to find a Lies Gang boy to escort me before my graduation ceremony, otherwise I would need to ask my uncle or grandfather to escort me. Crystal, what is their last name? Let me know. Let me know if this is someone we've already seen, and we just don't have the name. I would at the very least like to find someone who will boost my image, but I cannot say that being uncomplicated. I have asked Lady Helmina for her assistance, and shall be attempting to interact with Lies Gang nobles as much as possible. Lady Helmina, did Father not forbid you from speaking to her, given that she has a Lies Gang mother? Have you been keeping in contact with her regardless? My sister probed, looking at me with exasperation. I could already feel my face flushing. Despite the orders Mother and Father had given me, I was still secretly friends with Lady Helmina. She is such a good person. I did not want to cut her off due to the circumstances of adults. Plus, our friendship remains only in the classrooms of the Royal Academy. I am not doing anything that will inconvenience our family. I avoided eye contact as I gave my excuses, though I knew they would not change the fact that I had disobeyed my parents. Still, it is thanks to Lady Helmina that I was able to publicly show I am on good terms with the Lies Gangs during the Harspiel assembly. All's well that ends well, would you not agree? Mother and I had only been able to associate positively with the Lies Gangs because Lady Helmina and her mother had been willing to sit with us. I deeply regret that my marriage has put undue pressure on you, so I am relieved to know you have at least some connections with the Lies Gangs. I feel as though my burden has been lessened somewhat, my sister said with an apologetic smile. I smiled in turn. There was still time for me to find an escort, and matters of engagement did not have to be settled any time soon. I could wait until the balance of power had settled before making any concrete decisions. My sister and I each had unique hurdles to overcome as a consequence of the drastic change in the duchy's political state, so I understood her feelings of remorse well. Though, that is not to say the balance of power may not change yet again right after my own marriage. Faction politics were decided by the Ob and those around him. All we could do was move with the waves and strive to secure as solid of a position for ourselves as possible. We quietly sipped our tea, feeling bad for one another. Neither of us elected to speak, but our silence was not an awkward one. Rather, it was one of compassion as we each gave the other time to calm down. Crystal, please do tell me about the Harspiel assembly, my sister asked again, setting down her cup and smiling as if attempting to wash away the previous mood. At a tea party yesterday, there was a woman who proudly spoke of everything there having been fresh and new. The others who attended all expressed favored agreement, and yet no one would explain what fresh new things they were referring to. Is that not cruel? The tea party my sister spoke of was one attended primarily by those who had also attended the Harspiel assembly, so she had ended up feeling extremely alone. This news did not come as much of a surprise. Both Lady Helmina and I would admittedly become just as heated with excitement when we recalled Lord Ferdinand playing the Harspiel, and there had been so many novel aspects to the tea party that those not in the know would struggle to comprehend even simplified explanations. I can hardly blame those other women. There was so much at the tea party that even those of us who were in attendance still did not understand. I am not sure how I could even begin to describe them in a way that would make sense to an outsider. Oh my, you are saying exactly what they said, my sister commented with an exaggerated frown. A chuckle escaped me. It's true, words alone struggle to suffice, and there is much we are obligated to keep secret from those who did not attend. There are a few examples here within our home that I could show you, however. Perhaps those would be easier for you to understand? I instructed my attendant to retrieve my box, inside of which were all the treasures I had obtained during that sacred tea party. The first item I took out was one half of a ticket. Unlike most tea parties, we did not receive invitations. Instead, we needed to purchase these things called tickets to participate, I explained. We were shown a list of seats and allowed to choose where we wished to sit, rather than the organizer directing us. My sister listened to me with wide eyes, finding each revelation more shocking than the last. Does that mean seats were decided with no consideration of status and faction, she asked, a hand over her mouth. Indeed, the tickets were separated into tiers based on price, and one could sit in any of the seats assigned to that particular tier. The seats closer to where Lord Ferdinand was playing were more expensive, and those further away were cheaper. The seating chart I had also contained the names of those who had already purchased their tickets, so one could even intentionally avoid those they did not want to be near. It truly was a remarkable idea. Rosemine's idea right there. According to Lady Helmina, Lady Florencia took a seat far from the stage to emphasize that one could sit wherever they liked. Her table had only members from her own faction, but at a neighboring table sat members of another faction, and that did seem to greet and frequently converse with one another. Mother and I had purchased our tickets somewhat late, so we had been unable to sit close to Lady Florencia. Instead, we had taken Lady Helmina's offer for us to buy seats next to hers, allowing us the opportunity to listen to the music together. If attendees were able to sit wherever they pleased, were there many members of the Veronica faction near the front? For this performance, Lady Elvira made sure to position Lias Gang nobles at the front so that Lord Ferdinand would not be disturbed. That is a relief, my sister said with a smile. Lord Ferdinand received such poor treatment from Lady Veronica. It is good to know he was shown such consideration. Woo! Someone has fans! Still, thank God. At least not everybody treated him like crap. Despite being an Archduke candidate, Lord Ferdinand had been cruelly antagonized even while attending the Royal Academy, having to endure the students and their attendees following Lady Veronica's orders. My sister was familiar with many incidents that had resulted from this, and she was relieved to know Lady Elvira had taken action to protect him. Upon our arrival at the tea party, attendants checked our tickets and guided us to our chosen seats. They then cut our tickets in half, see? Look along this edge here. I wasn't sure why they had opted to take one half of our tickets, but they had. Sweets called cookies and pound cakes were served at the Hartsfield Assembly, I continued. Lady Rosamond created the recipes for both, and they have been making frequent appearances at tea parties hosted by members of the Lady Florencia faction. I am told they are quite unique and delicious, my sister said with a wistful sigh. I chuckled mischievously as I took out a bundle of cloth. In here are cookies made with tea leaves used said to be Lord Ferdinand's personal preference. They were sold after the performance as souvenirs. Would you care to try one? Oh, yes! I took one of the carefully preserved cookies and handed it to my sister. She looked at it with great interest before taking a small, swift bite. The sweetness is sugar, perhaps, she asked. Is it not too sweet, though? I feel as though I could eat these forever. That faint sweetness goes perfectly with the crisp, crunchy texture, wouldn't you agree? I find myself reaching for them more often than I would care to admit, but I am careful to pace myself such that I might savor the memories of the day. I picked up a cookie for myself and placed it on my plate. Despite my best efforts to savor the taste, it was gone in no time at all. I was taking care to eat only one a day, but there were already but 2 cookies left remaining. Going through them quick. The Hartsfield playing of the day flashes through my mind whenever I eat one of these cookies, I noted. I have an important ritual for consuming them. Oh, please do elaborate, my sister said, looking at me with amusement. I next took the programming sheet out from the box. The front was decorated with an illustration of an unusual style that relied on thick black lines and white space, creating an image of a man playing the Hartsfield. Beneath him were the names of the songs that had been played on the day, as well as their lyrics. My sister frowned a little as her eyes ran across the page. Sister, this here programming lists all the songs that were played at the event, I explained. Many sheets identical to this one were made to market a new for-profit industry known as printing. I always gazed upon the lyrics written on the sheet while eating the cookies, replaying the recital in my mind. I closed my eyes, recalling the heavenly notes of the Hartsfield as the sweetness of the cookie danced across my palate. I don't believe I recognize any of these songs. Observe the name of the composer. Lady Rosamond is written for each one, see? Lady Rosamond composed them while Lord Ferdinand and Rosina arranged them? Who is this Rosina? Lady Rosamond's personal musician, I presume. They are most likely songs that Lady Rosamond asked her musician to compose. It was hard to imagine someone so young as her composing this many songs. It made far more sense to assume she was receiving credit for the work of her musician. That is not particularly uncommon. With the expectations these songs and suites are no doubt going to create, I expect Lady Rosamond is going to be under a lot of pressure during her debut, I said. I must say, though, they were all quite excellent. This one in particular, this love song dedicated to Guduld, practically exuded artistic talent. Lord Ferdinand played a love song? I truly would have loved to hear that. Back in the Royal Academy, I had resorted to sneakily eavesdropping while he practiced, but even then, His playing was so masterful, my heart swooned with each strum. I knew it. Even in the Royal Academy, he had groupies. Ferdinand, you can't escape it. My sister had attended the Royal Academy alongside Lord Ferdinand, meaning she had listened to his playing before. But the Hartspiel assembly was my first time. It was there that I was immediately convinced he had received a blessing from Kunstziel, the goddess of art. There was no other way to explain the divinity in which he played. A great number of magic tools were used so that Lord Ferdinand's voice reverberated throughout the hall. I speak with all honesty when I say it felt as though he were whispering directly into my ear. I could see the goddess of spring dancing before my very eyes. I imagine many even felt the arrival of Blonfa, the goddess of sprouts. That's a new one. I know the feeling well. He truly does have the playing skills to entice even a princess, my sister said, nodding to herself and laughing. I cannot say whether it was due to the romantic nature of the song or Lord Ferdinand's sultry voice. Both. It was both. But women were falling unconscious on the spot. Keep this between us, but Mother was no exception. Truly? Yes. Also, while our reason for attending was to change our faction, we spent far too much money. Mother was not very motivated at first, but by the end of the love song, both she and I had more or less collapsed onto our table. We were in such a state that we were almost escorted out by the knights. It was only because we rushed to compose ourselves and profess that we were fine that they allowed us to stay. I then went on to explain how a number of women hadn't been quite so fortunate in ultimately needing to be carried from the venue. My sister gave an exasperated look. To think she would faint in such a public place. It was an embarrassing failure for a proper lady, but no woman who had participated would ever describe this particular fainting spell as such. The air carried such intense excitement that not a soul could be blamed for passing out. Oh, I can't wait for that to be animated so badly. I want to see it. I want to hear it. I'm going to keep that on my playlist. Just so I can listen to it. They better animate it. At least that song, at least. That romance song, oh my god, it's going to get so many Ferdinand fans. If there aren't any already. It truly was a special time, I said. Everyone resorted to gripping an empty face stone beneath the table to contain their storm of emotions. I myself was surprised to find that I was impassioned enough to fill my face stone entirely. We all carried empty face stones for matters of emergency, but it was rare for a person to actually find the need to use one. It was standard to simply contain one's storm of emotions with the mind. Okay. I see now why those of us who did not participate struggled to understand, my sister said. The Hartspiel assembly had not been a standard affair during which everyone put on a polite facade. It was a gathering where the attendees wore their hearts on their sleeves, exposing their feelings to the world. It was hard to explain this to those who had not participated because doing so was the same as exposing one's embarrassing history. Only those who had shared the joy of the heated event could understand and talk about it at length. Toward the end, the brushed over and played the Hartspiel alongside Lord Ferdinand. It was my first time hearing him play also, and I must say, he was very good. The music became heavier and fancier with them both playing at once. They played a well-known Sarim, and we all sang along. It felt as though all the attendees became one in that moment, united in our excitement. I wish to experience it again one day if possible. Sadly, Ferdinand has anything to say about it. It ain't happening again. Sylvester might, but Ferdinand no. And now I wish to as well, my sister said with an envious sigh. Allow me to show you something else, dear sister, that I would show to no other. These two must remain only to those who participated, and they are my treasure. Oh, the illustrations! I took out another bundle of cloth from the box and slowly unwrapped it. Oh my, these are illustrations of Lord Ferdinand. What is the meaning of this? Should Lady Veronica hear about these? Our house will... yes, she is gone now. My sister gazed upon the illustrations, unable to contain the smile that had risen on her face. I knew well that my sister had admired Lord Ferdinand from afar when they attended the Royal Academy. She would tell me about him quite regularly, speaking at immense length of his skill with the Hartspiel and his awe-inspiring dinner victories. I can't wait to see that stuff animated. That's going to be cool. These illustrations were created with the new printing technology I mentioned. They are amazing. Beautiful, even. Wouldn't you agree? They capture Lord Ferdinand impeccably, whether it be his perfect eyes, his exquisite brows, or his countless other handsome features. Let's see. I have recalled the recital in my mind countless times while gazing upon these. I set the 3 illustrations down on the table, taking care not to crease or dirty them. I had ordered ornate frames so that I could display them around our home, but the order would take some time to finish. I needed to treasure and preserve them until then. Lady Helmina informed me about this. It seems printing is a new technology that can produce exact copies of documents, I said. I was very impressed when I saw so many copies of the same document, but originally I did not understand the value in pushing the industry to the point that donations were required to sustain it. When Lady Helmina had purchased the programming before the recital, I thought only that if one wanted copies of the same document, they would simply hire as many scholars as necessary. Indeed, printing may be useful now while we are suffering from a shortage of personnel, but when there are more scholars, one would need only procure at their services. Is this not stealing work from lay nobles lacking in mana? Unlike my sister, I had not thought to consider the lay nobles, but I imagined many other nobles also failed to see the point in spending so much on the printing industry. When I saw these illustrations after watching Lord Ferdinand perform, however, I stopped thinking that way. Being able to produce so many exact copies of something is of the utmost importance. No scholar would be able to perfectly reproduce these illustrations, no? Ordering art would usually result in a significant waiting period, and the artist could not sell copies of the same picture to multiple people at once. And yet so many of us sharing the same illustration was superb. It emphasized our shared memories. In short, there are many copies of these illustrations, my sister said. Indeed, 100 perfect copies of each illustration were sold at the tea party, all made by printing. As I'm sure you can guess, they all sold out. My sister longingly gazed upon the illustrations on the table before looking up at me with a steely expression. Crystal, please do give me one, she asked. Then I will also be able to join the discussions at tea parties. I am afraid I cannot do that, dear sister. But you have 3! Can you truly not part with just one? I too yearn for an illustration of Lord Ferdinand. I do too! Come on, whoever draws the illustrations, make them. Actually, I think they did. I might be able to buy them, but I'd have to look. I knew well that my sister had flushed for Lord Ferdinand back in her Royal Academy days, and one of these illustrations would prove a valuable weapon for her to participate in tea party discussions, despite her having been unable to attend the Harspiel assembly herself. However, the 3 illustrations sitting atop the table were all unique, and I had promised Mother that I would preserve them until the frames arrived. It was not my place to lend them out without permission, and given how sharply Mother's essay gleamed when she battled the crowd to purchase them, it was hard to imagine she would ever allow them to leave the estate. Oh, they ain't leaving. Not if you guys have anything to say about it. I am keeping these safe for Mother, so I cannot give them away to anyone, not even you. Each one cost 5 large silvers. 5 large silvers for an illustration lacking color? I am surprised Father would allow Mother to purchase not just 1 but 3. He was furious, of course. He could not believe she would spend so much at a single tea party. Mother was only able to calm him by saying it was a necessary cost to shift our faction to more stable territory, I explained. Father was the one who had ordered Mother to attend the tea party in the first place, so he had not been able to argue any further. Oh my, but does that argument carry weight when one remembers that Mother grew heated enough to fall unconscious? My. That is a secret between you and me, dear sister. Recall that I gifted you one of my precious cookies. Those were available for purchase only at the Harspiel assembly. My sister gave a sigh that was equal parts impressed and exasperated. She went on to speak, only to be interrupted as an ordonnance flew into the room. Who could this be? I wondered aloud. The ordonnance flew around the room once before settling in front of us. Lady Crystal, it's Helmina, came a bright, excited voice. Lady Elvira is holding a tea party 10 days from now to discuss the Harspiel assembly. She said to invite all those who brought copies of each of the illustrations. Please do join us. It will be a positively splendid occasion. The bird repeated its message 3 times before reverting into a yellow face-stone, which then clattered onto the table. You earned Lady Elvira's invitations by purchasing all the illustrations? My sister asked, her mouth agape. I suppose Father truly cannot scold Mother for it. I nodded. Sister, I will attempt to persuade Lady Elvira and the others as best I can. Perhaps they will hold another Harspiel assembly. Oh, wait, was she one of the people at the thing where the Gilberta Company was selling stuff? And they were showing them the illustrations that they had hidden and that they couldn't sell? Crystal, I would not be able to attend without permission from my husband. I ask only that you see whether they can arrange for those like me to purchase the illustrations independently. 10 days after that lively tea party with my sister, I attended another tea party with Mother, this one hosted by Lady Elvira. Our intention was not only to discuss the harpsichord performance, however, we were all gathering to extol Lord Ferdinand for all his virtues. It was an irreplaceably delightful time during which we all reminisced and allowed our fervent excitement to show. It was only natural, then, that there would be cause for another harpsichord assembly to be held. Upon seeing our enthusiasm, however, Lady Elvira's expression clouded over, and she looked across us all with sorrow in her eyes. I regret this more than anyone, but I cannot hold another recital, nor can I sell any more illustrations of Lord Ferdinand, she announced. Lady Elvira went on to report that she had received Lord Ferdinand's assistance under the promise that it would be a one-time event. To make matters worse, Ob Ehrenfest had leaked to him the existence of the illustrations, which in turn caused Lord Ferdinand to forbid Lady Rosamund from ever printing them again. How terrible! To think we would be thrust into a pit of despair so soon after being taught the splendor of printing and donating so much. It seemed that my feelings of displeasure toward Ob Ehrenfest would not be resolved any time soon. Oh, yeah, because you're mad at him because he leaked the things to Ferdinand. Yeah. But that wasn't him. That was Eckert. Okay, I think I'm going to end this one off here. And I will see everybody in the next one. I hope this won't take only a couple parts. I'll see you on the next one.